My main sewing related goal this year is wardrobe planning, and part of that is getting a better idea of what colors I most want to wear. I frequently wear color combinations that I do not like just because there's no other option, and I could avoid that if I planned my sewing projects better. It seems obvious in hindsight, but it's taken quite a while to realize that the colors I like to wear are just a subcategory of the colors I think are nice to look at. I can appreciate the colors in a landscape or a building or someone else's outfit and still hate wearing them. For quite a few years I just hadn't thought of that, and consequently I've bought fabric and sewn up multiple garments in colors that I don't like on me, which is not ideal considering how much time sewing takes. This is not a tutorial. I'm going to hold up a lot of colors in front of a mirror and form opinions on them. And then I'm going to play around with color combinations in a few different ways. For a video with a somewhat different strategy, I recommend this one by Breathing Yarn. I've decided to sort the colors into 3 categories. The first one is favorites, which I would wear in any amount. Second favorites are colors that I either don't love as much or I specifically love them in smaller amounts as a contrast to a larger amount of a different color. And the third category I'm calling incidental because it's colors I would prefer to wear only occasionally in tiny amounts, as part of a multicolored print or in patchwork or maybe a lining, but I don't want a whole garment out of them, unless it's a wearable mock-up, I suppose. These categories are highly subjective and also not very cohesive. Having a more restricted color scheme can be really helpful for some people, but I don't think that would feel right for the way I like to work. I don't want to cut myself off from any options, especially because with secondhand materials, which is most of my stash, you never know what's going to come along. So if an interesting fabric catches my eye, it's more useful to have kind of a sliding scale of how likely I am to use it. I must emphasize that this is only how I feel about the colors on me. I don't think any colors are objectively bad, and something that looks horrible on me and is not my style can still look very nice on somebody else. I've got my colors all arranged in order, categories for sorting, and lots of sunlight. Starting with neutrals, black goes in the favorites category. Good to wear in any amount, and it goes with lots of other colors. Grey, I'm not so sure about. I don't like it as much as black, but it goes nicely with a lot of things. It depends on the particular shade and texture. I put most of these in second, but I don't want to wear any greys with a cool bluish tinge. White and off-white are both great for shirts, neckcloths, cravats, socks, and stockings. Definitely the most historical colors for underthings. But I don't think I would care much for outerwear in either of them. They're fine as the background of something printed or embroidered, but not plain white. I did once have an unlined white linen waistcoat for summer, and I can imagine white linen pants also being nice, but that's more of a practical thing for hot sunny weather, so I guess that puts both of those in second favorites. I find off-white nicer to look at than optic white, but they both have their uses. Beige and greige I do not like, and I don't think they look very good on me, but they're acceptable as the colors of unbleached linen, which often gets used for things like historical waistcoat backs. I don't think I would mind having an unbleached linen shirt, but that's only one specific exception, and I'm still putting this color in the third category. Beige and similar light brownish colors can be alright in prints. I quite like this shirt and this waistcoat, but I never wear them together. They've got to go with something contrasting. Third category again. This caramel color is pretty nice, but it is a bit light for me. I like this darker one better, but it's still not my favorite. I put the darker one in the second category and the lighter one in the third. This dark chocolate brown is very good, definitely in the favorites category. And so is this dark brown, and this one, and this even darker one. I really love the color of this brown cotton shirt I made last year, and this brown and gold waistcoat that I have a video about. This dark brown is a little more reddish, and still very good and in the favorites category. This one's a bit light, and I don't love it, but it's okay. I'll probably use this fabric for pants. Second favorites. And this desaturated grayish brown is also in the second category. Not my favorite, but it does go very well with some colors. I'm not sure how well this one's showing up on screen, but it's kind of a dark gray and also kind of brownish. Second category. The baskets are filling up pretty quickly because obviously it's quite a lot of fabric. So I'm going to cut tiny swatches of all of these and put them in these glasses so I can keep track of what's in what category. Then I can start putting some fabric away. Moving on to the color wheel now. I love green, but it can be a bit tricky because there are so many different greens. This olive green looks quite nice on me. It's not my absolute favorite and I put it in the second category, but I think within that category it's pretty high up. These two greens are too pale. I'd like them a lot more if they were a bit more towards teal and a bit darker. One of them is the fabric I used for my first leaf bolero, and I think it works decently enough there because it's small and has veins and shading painted on, but I still would prefer it to be darker. A small amount of this color in a print or something would be fine, but I don't like the effect of large pieces of it, which puts both of these in the third category. This bright lime is not something I'd want a full suit of, but in smaller amounts I really like it. I don't like neons very much, but this is a little bit less eye-searing than a neon. It would work very nicely as a waistcoat under a black jacket. Second favorites. Same goes for this slightly tamer lime. This somewhat more yellowy chartreuse is also not something I'd want a huge amount of, but I can picture it being a nice accent color, so it also goes in second. I really like this moss green, and I wish this fabric didn't have fade marks. It can go in favorites. I tried not to let the texture of the fabrics themselves affect my decisions, but I think this one might have suffered due to being an obvious tablecloth. But maybe it didn't. This cotton sateen remnant is almost the exact same color, and I put both of them in the second favorites category. This wool might look black on camera, but it's green, and the waistcoat I'm wearing in this shot is also a very dark green. I do like it, but I don't like the fact that it's so dark it just looks black a lot of the time, because functionally it's kind of like a less versatile black. Second favorites. My feelings on emerald green depend a lot on the individual fabric and the particular shade. I was pretty uncertain about this one and didn't remember which category I'd put it in, but it turns out I put it in favorites. I suppose because it's nice and dark, but not too dark like the previous green. I would prefer if it were a bit more towards teal though. This washed out sage green is very nice, but I think I might like it more for home decor than for clothing. I still put that one and this next one in the second category. It's a good background color to add darker greens on top of. This sage green shirt was my favorite for such a long time. It's actually the second one I've made from the same linen because I love the first one so much, but I haven't been loving it that much lately. I think it's partly because I outgrew the greyish brown waistcoat that went with it so perfectly, and it just doesn't work as well with any of my current waistcoats. This green is so washed out and grey that it's barely green at all. Third category. And this one is also murky and grey with not very much green in it. I don't really like it by itself, and I put it in the third category. After filming this, I used that fabric to make a wearable mock-up for the pants I drafted in my previous video, and I like those pants more than I expected to, but that doesn't change my rating for this color. This teal corduroy is very nice and it goes in favorites, as does this shot silk and this cotton. I love teals and lichen greens. I think this cotton sateen bedsheet went in the second category mostly because the fabric made it feel a bit hospital-y, but it also is a bit too pale and bluish. I put this next one in favorites, but maybe I should have put it in second. It is quite light and not that different from the previous color. This one is definitely too pale to go in favorites. It would be okay for a shirt, but I'd want to wear darker versions of the same sorts of color on top of it. I think I'll make a nightgown out of this particular bedsheet. Second favorites. I was very indecisive about this green velveteen, but ended up putting it in favorites. I wouldn't call it teal, but it's definitely more on the coolish side, as greens go. I was thinking maybe I prefer it in somewhat smaller amounts because it's so bright, but I think I could do a larger amount of this. Though, once again, the fabric texture may have affected my opinion. This bright teal is very good. I do think I prefer it in somewhat smaller amounts when it's this light and bright, but I still love it enough to put it in favorites. As I said, these categories are very subjective. This is a nice dark green that's kind of on the teal side, which puts it in favorites. And this more saturated dark teal is perhaps the best color in my entire stash. I would love to have more materials in this exact color. Favorite category, obviously. This turquoise is also very nice, and while it wouldn't be my favorite in a huge amount, I would certainly wear it in a second category amount. I can see this being nice as a coat, or pants and a waistcoat, but not all three together. It's a very similar color to the shirt I made in my shirt tutorial video, which is one of my very favorite shirts. This one's a pretty similar turquoise to the previous piece of fabric, just a bit more blue, and it's the same one I used in my apron video. Second favorites. This one is maybe just a smidge more towards blue than I'd like, but it's close enough to teal that I did still put it in favorites. Since filming this, I've overdyed that fabric with a tiny bit of yellow, so maybe it should have gone in second, because a favorite should not need overdying. Another turquoise for the second favorites category, this one somewhat lighter. This one was hard to make up my mind on because it's a nice color to look at, but I felt like it was maybe just a bit too blue. I love dark teal, but I dislike navy blue, and this falls somewhere in between. I put it in second favorites, but since filming I have put it through a very weak vat of yellow dye, so it's just a shade more teal now. One thing I noticed while doing this exercise is that the blues I like best are the ones that look teal when compared to primary blue. This one looks fairly blue on its own, but a lot more teal next to this cobalt blue. Here's a nice bright peacock blue that I used for this waistcoat a couple years ago, and it goes in the second category because it's a very nice accent color. Like the previous one, it also looks a little bit teal when it's next to the cobalt. This shot silk has blue threads one way and teal threads the other, and I do wish it was more teal, but it's just enough to make the second category. The photo on the website I ordered it from was certainly teal enough to go in favorites, but alas. This is a very pale blue with silver metallic pinstripes, and it's pretty to look at, but I don't like it on me. I put this one in the third category because I can imagine a small bit of it working as part of a larger design. Like maybe some beads in this color sewn onto something dark to imitate frost, but I would like to overdye this fabric. Same with this one. Perfectly nice pale sky blue, but I don't want to wear it in any significant amount, so it goes in the third category. I really hated the way this baby blue looked on me, so that's a no. This bright cobalt, or perhaps old-fashioned computer screen blue, was a bit of a tough one. It is a nice color and it looks fabulous with black, but somehow I feel certain that if I made a whole garment out of this, I would never wear it. Looking at it, I kept wishing it was more greenish. I do think it would make a nice accent color on some things though, in very small amounts. That puts it in the third category. Since filming this, I've overdyed most of that piece of velveteen with yellow, but I saved a little piece of the blue. I don't like any shade of blue denim, and I never have. I've worn jeans in off-white and in burgundy, but I've never had blue jeans. I mean, I did make these jeeches many years ago, but that was just because I thought it would be funny. No more blue denim for me. I gave this piece to a friend. Navy blue is a nice enough color to look at, but it turns out I really don't like wearing it. I made this navy blue coat in 2022 out of some secondhand wool, and it's too small now. But when it did fit, it looked really good on me, and I practically never wore it. I kept wishing it was a different color. The only colors I liked to pair with it were white, gray, bluish gray, and silver. There's plenty of other colors that look nice with navy, but I just really don't want to wear it, and I feel pretty much the same way about these blue linen pants. These navy and white striped pants are fine, I guess, but I don't like to wear them with anything besides white and gray. I don't hate them, but again, I just wish the stripes were a different color. I would not buy this fabric again. I still have about 7 meters left, but it can be overdyed. I don't mind a tiny bit of dark blue here and there. I like wearing this necklace, and I like the navy blue stenciling on this apron, but large solid areas of it are terribly uninspiring, so I put this lighter navy in the third category and the darker ones in no. I also really don't like blue grays on me. I had originally put this muted light blue in the third category because glazed cotton is really hard to find and I have 9.4 meters of this one, but later I removed it because I'm judging colors here and I don't want any more of this one. I will use it for linings because I have it, but I'll try to make sure it doesn't show too much. I noticed a while ago I was feeling kind of bad about this shirt, and I thought maybe it was because it's getting worn and faded, but I feel the same way about the cap I made from the leftover fabric last year. I just don't want to wear this color. I do love dark purple, but this particular one has so much blue in it that it's too close to navy, and I can't help but put it in the third category, which is a shame because leather is expensive. This one is also kind of purple, but also really close to blue-gray, so it's third category as well. I expected this purple to place lower because it is definitely on the bluish side, but it's saturated in purple enough that I ended up putting it in second. Here's a purple I like better. It's kind of muted, but nice and dark. Good enough for the second category. And this one's even better, so it's definitely in favorites. This one might be the other best color in my stash. Same with this bedsheet, a very good purple. This purple linen shirt I made last year is one of my favorites, and I also really love the dark plum-colored wool I used for this jacket. It was navy blue wool, but I overdyed it with magenta. This purple is so dark it almost looks black, and while I wish it was a bit more visibly purple, it's still in the favorites category. Lilac is nice enough, but I'm just not big on pastels. I would wear gloves or maybe a neckcloth in this color, and I like it as the lining for that jacket, but not more than that. Third category. Another nice dark purple for the favorites. And these next two are quite grayish and washed out, but still some sort of purple. I put the darker one in the second category and the lighter one in third. This one's pretty similar and is also in the second category. It's the color I get when I throw some white fabric into an already used up vat of black dye. This other scrap of muslin I'm fairly certain I dyed with logwood, and it's also in second favorites. Looking at my swatches, I see I put this one in the third category, but I'm not sure why. It's not really that different from the purples in second. And for some reason I put both of these purples in the second category. Looking at the footage, I feel like they should be in first, but I'm not going to question it, at least not for now. Hot pink is the color of my umbrella, which I don't mind, but umbrellas are not clothing, and I've also got a few specks of it in these purple mittens. I would prefer if the mittens did not have the pink specks. I just don't like it, so it goes in the no category. This dark raspberry color is another one that's nice to look at, but I just don't want to wear it, so it's a no. This burgundy is also a no. All these dark red and pinkish colors, I just don't want to wear them. Lighter shades of pink are also not my style, and I think they look very bad on me, especially peachy ones like this. It's too close to my skin tone and makes me look all pink and blotchy. I don't much like any of the shades of pink fabric I have here, but I went through my stash of thrifted embroidery floss and found a couple snippets I like better. Some of these are the same colors as some of those fabrics, but I guess I like them better in thread form because they're smaller. All the different shades of pink floss looked pretty spread out on the table, but I had a hard time imagining how I would work any specific one of them into a project. I could see myself using some pink in a moth-inspired project, so I won't rule them out entirely, but I would need to make samples first. I kinda wish I liked pink more, just out of spite, because gender stereotypes are so very stupid, but it is simply not my style, and that's okay. Doing something out of spite for a foolish thing is still letting the foolish thing affect you. Salmon is definitely a no. It looks horrible on me, and it's not a color I like on its own. I've been meaning to overdye this damask because it's a lovely fabric, but a very unflattering color. These peachy pink sorts of colors are way better suited to darker skin tones. This fabric is really close to being a nice coppery color, and I love copper, but it's just a bit too light, more towards a pinkish brick red. It goes in the third category because I do want to over-dye it, but not by very much, just a little bit of dye. It's so close to being good that in some light I sometimes question my plans to over-dye it. Here's a very dark red, which I just don't like on me. Third category. I don't dislike this shirt as much as I do the blue-gray one, but I would not buy this color of linen again. It's a very pretty color on its own, I just don't like wearing it. This more saturated red is better, but I still don't want large amounts of it. A little bit too dark. I do like a nice bright blood red though. Preferably still in small amounts, but a moderate amount is okay too. I like it best with black, but it can be a nice contrast to some other colors. Second favorites. On a side note, red is the worst color for dye bleeding. I've used red cotton as a lining twice, and I need to remember to not do it again, because both times it came off on my white shirts. Red dye is just not very good at staying stuck to the fibers compared to other dyes. This also makes it quicker to fade with washing. I hand wash that red shirt by itself in cold, and it still makes the water pink. And of course the bleeding tends to be even worse with secondhand fabrics of unknown age and origin, which is often what I prefer to use, so there are practical reasons for me to limit the use of red. It's also one of the worst colors for sun fading, which is why old prints often have a distinct blue tint. And why you sometimes see bumper stickers that look like this. This one and the next one are both a rusty brownish kind of color, and I think they're very nice. Not my favorite, but solidly in the second category. More orangey red I'm not overly fond of, but in the specific context of an autumn leaf-themed outfit with a variety of shades, it would be fine and good, so it's in the third category. I had never really considered orange for my wardrobe until recently, but I do love autumn. I made 2 orange waistcoats last year, and I like them quite a lot. I also made this pair of orange breeches in 2020, and they were just for costume purposes and don't really fit me anymore, but I also liked them a lot more than I expected to. So bright pumpkin orange is in the second category. Yellow is another color I'd never really considered. I think I do like mustard yellow as an accent color for some things. I bought this linen a few years ago specifically to go with the purple and gold jacket I showed earlier in the video. I haven't sewn it up into a shirt yet, but when I do I think it'll go great with the dark brown leaf bolero too. This more sunshiny dandelion yellow is not quite as good as the mustard, I think, but I can still imagine myself maybe using it for a waistcoat. So these are both tentatively in the second category with the possibility of moving down to third. These breeches are somehow a bit less cheerful and a bit more poisonous looking than the other yellows, so I put this color in third. This fabric is approximately the color of my straw hat, but I don't want any fabric in this shade. Third category, and only on account of the necessity of straw hats in summer. I definitely don't like pale butter yellow. I made this leaf kerchief for a video to demonstrate the simplest option for finishing the edge, and I'd only bought that linen in the first place because it was on sale for very cheap. I have given away this leaf kerchief and the rest of the linen to a friend. As for metallics, I think I like gold and silver about equally. I prefer the silver to be nice and bright. I don't really like darker gunmetal gray metallics, especially not if they've got a bluish tinge. I used to only like dark brassy antique gold, but I've warmed up to the bright yellowy kind, partly because it seems to be the most common color for vintage brooches to be. I am mostly thinking about jewelry for these, but I do also have some metallic fabric and leather. But since I don't plan on wearing solid metallics in quantities larger than a waistcoat, gold and silver are both going in the second favorites. And so is metallic copper, which I also really love. I would have a lot more copper jewelry if it were easier to find, and if it didn't turn people green. I think I would have put copper instead of gold on my purple jacket if I'd had the option, but I don't have copper-colored leather or buttons in my stash. The sun's getting low and I turned on my lamp so it wouldn't get too dim in here, but I'm all finished and it is still daylight out. Yay! Swatch time! I cut little snippets of all the colors and put them in these glasses to keep them organized. I ironed them all nice and flat and stuck them to 3 sheets of cardstock with double-sided tape. It was pleasing to see them all lined up. I put these sheets in plastic binder sleeves and took the first 2 to the hardware store so I could acquire some free paint chips in the various colors. For some reason there were no reds that matched my bright red cottons. These look more similar on my screen, but in person they're all too bright or too dark. Very strange. I also forgot to get some colors and found a bit of scrap paper in my stash that matched a few of them. I didn't have much metallic paper though, and the paint chips don't come in metallic. For gold I had this cardboard from a lampshade, but I didn't have a good silver, so I glued some aluminum foil to a bit of cardstock. And then it peeled off when it dried, so I just had bits of unsupported foil. I also didn't have any metallic copper paper or paint, but I do have this nail polish, so I put a couple coats of it on a piece of the gold lampshade. It's a bit darker and more red than actual copper, but I really don't want to buy new craft material just for one little sample, so it'll have to do for now. I am also not in favor of people putting nail polish on things that are meant to last, because nail polish is not meant to last, and it's also very expensive considering how tiny the bottles are. Here's me removing that blue glazed cotton and adding a couple snippets of pink embroidery floss. Sometime later I went back to the hardware store and got more paint chips, but I still somehow forgot to get emerald green, so I decided to use a bit of fabric temporarily. I thought it would be interesting to make a chart of color combinations and mark down which ones I like. I couldn't use all my swatches because there were way too many, so I removed a lot of the ones that were really similar and cut 2 little squares from each of the remaining 29. I started out tracing a little square template, but eventually got tired of it and switched to cutting without tracing, so the later pieces are not perfectly square. I'm arranging them on the grid on the back of this wrapping paper. I was originally going to put the colors in 2 lines, straight up and down, but when I sketched it out with numbers I found that that would leave 2 squares for each color combination. So I made 1 line straight across the top and the other line diagonal. There's 1 singular square of the purple at the upper left corner, but all the rest have 2 squares, 1 on each axis. I stuck them down with double-sided tape. The next day I got some more green paint chips and replaced those green fabric bits with paper ones. I taped on an extension so I could add another bright green, because it felt a bit imbalanced. That brought my total up to 30 colors. Colors can work very differently depending on the amount and the design and the other colors around it, but to keep it simple, I'm just going to look at 2 color swatches next to each other and judge based on that. I'm going to give them either a yes, a no, or half a point, based on how much I want to wear them together. There are some combinations that I think look nice, but that I don't want to wear. I gave bright red and blue a no, and I do think they look good together. It's a very cheerful medieval sort of combination, but it's just not the kind of contrast I want in my wardrobe. I'm trying to go with my first impressions and to not overthink it, but it was surprisingly difficult. 2 paint chips next to each other are not an optimal way to look at pretty colors. For all the copper comparisons, I used this brooch as well as the painted swatch, because this swatch is not quite as coppery as it should be. A no doesn't necessarily mean I would never wear both colors together in the same outfit, but I would not want to wear large plain areas of both right next to each other. They would have to be mixed in with or separated by other colors, and preferably in vastly different amounts. I'm not totally against mixing metallics, but I usually prefer not to, so all 3 of those combinations got half a point. Next thing I want to try is adding up all the points for each color. They've all got the same number of combinations, it's just that the first one goes straight across and then the other ones are various different L shapes. I'm going to count all the check marks as 1 and all the halves as halves, but I'm also going to count how many no's there are. I know this is really not a perfect system because the particular shade and how many individual colors I have affects the results. If I had more greens or fewer purples, then the score would be different, and there are infinite colors out there. And I have got 2 teals that are pretty similar. But just generally I think it'll be interesting to see how they all rank for versatility. My aim here is to find colors that go with the most other colors so I can focus on using those for some practical basics. I added up all the positive and negative points and wrote them on each paint chip. I used a dark pencil on the lighter ones and a white pencil on the darker ones. Sometimes I made a mistake and had to redo the count and correct it. Pencil didn't work on the metallics, so I had to use Sharpie on those. I don't have any wall space for this chart, so after taking a picture of it, I rolled it up and stuck it on top of a shelf. If, at any point, I want to add more colors, I might draw a digital version. Now I have swatches with numbers on them, showing how they score out of 29 possible combinations. I marked those numbers on tinier snippets and arranged both sets in order, on 2 sheets of cardstock. I glued them down, except for the aluminum foil, which needed double-sided tape. I cut the tops off those paint chips and put them in their own binder sleeve, just in case I want to know the names of the colors. I let the 2 sheets dry under a large book so the glue wouldn't make them wrinkly, and then had a look at how they compared. Okay, here they are. So this is the one where I've added up all the points and half points and put them in order from most to least, and this is the one where I've added up all the no's, the dislikes, and have put them in order from least to most. And it's different because this one gives the likes and the half points equal weight. Black and brown and dark teal scored right up at the top on both of these, which is not surprising. I did expect them to place pretty high, but I also expected dark purple to be right up at the top, and it's a little bit further down. I do think the dark teal had a bit of an unfair advantage because I could have narrowed these down to just one, but also these are some of my most favorite colors, so it makes sense that I would like more color combinations that include them. The metallics are all pretty high in terms of few dislikes, but gold and silver are way higher than copper on this one. I'm surprised at how high bright green scored. I should definitely make a waistcoat out of some of that bright lime green silk. A lot of grays and greens and medium browns in the middle. The two yellows are in opposite positions. And I kind of thought mustard would score higher, but I guess it does look gross with a lot of other colors. This particular bright green is not surprising that it's down this low because I do like this color, but it's so hard to put with other colors. I mostly only like it with black and with other greens. I am surprised at how low orange is. Thought that would do a bit better. And bright red, also not super surprising that it's way down here because it's a nice accent, but a lot like the bright green. I just don't like it with very many other things. Dark brown and dark teal were the only ones where I didn't dislike a single combination. So yes, I should try to get more fabric and make more practical everyday things in these colors. And also dark purple. Again, this is a very imperfect system, and my opinions might have been different on a different day or in different lighting, so this is not a hard and fast priority list, but just a general idea. I want to have a physical collection of color combinations in the binder, so next I tried making some simple collages. I used colored cardstock, paint chips, and a few bits of scrap paper from my stash. I don't know if these will be useful, but I do want to make more of them. The colored cardstock does limit the background options, so I would also like to paint some of the paper next time. And perhaps do some little color compositions with just paint. I might also make some collages with fabric scraps. A lot of the color schemes I like are groups of mostly similar colors, but that's alright, because the point is that I like them. And I do like doing patchwork in a limited color scheme. And I can hold up other colors on top of these ones and see how they look. I also have a Pinterest board with color combinations I like, so I could print off some of those and put them in the binder too. I've got a lot of similar ones on there, and I could print sheets with several of them grouped together. Eventually it would be nice to have a collage or painting or printed off picture for all the color combinations on that chart that I liked, so I could flip through them all. But that doesn't feel like something I should do all at once. Well, that was interesting. I'm glad I did that. There was some stuff that I kind of vaguely knew, and some that was a bit surprising. I had assumed I liked blue more than I actually do, but it turns out I only like it as an ingredient, and in a pretty limited range of shades. I also thought I liked cool colors way better than warm ones, but there seems to be a pretty good variety. I already knew I like wearing dark colors best, and that pastels are not my style, so that wasn't a surprise. It is funny that that doesn't apply to red, though. Dark red is nice, but I don't want it. A lot of my favorite sorts of color schemes for clothing are a large amount of very similar colors and a small amount of a brighter contrasting color. The amount of the various colors and the way they're distributed makes such a huge difference. I've always loved the combination of a really dark purple with a bright peacock blue, as evidenced by these mitts I made in 2013, but it's got to be a large amount of the purple with just a little bit of the blue. I did the holding up fabric thing months ago because I had to finish the pants drafting video before getting back to this one. It'll take some time to sew enough things to see the results of all this color scheming in my actual wardrobe, but it has already helped me with fabric buying. When I'm looking through the fabric racks at the thrift store and I find a nice piece of natural fiber, I stop and I think of where it falls in my color categories, and it's preventing me from buying stuff that I probably wouldn't have used for anything. I've ordered a bunch of linen for making summer pants, and I might get some more shirt linen later this year. And I found a bright teal umbrella at an estate sale. I also overdyed some stash material, which I've been meaning to do for ages. A lot of the results were not quite what I was hoping for, but nearly everything is an improvement from the colors I started with. I got some nice greens and purples, and I have a lot more fabric I want to dye, so hopefully I'll get to some more later this year. Vat dyeing is such a huge amount of work, and it's not enjoyable to do, so I'm trying not to go, ooh, I could just over dye this when I'm out thrifting, unless it's a small thing like trim, or fabric that's nice enough to be worth the effort. It'll be worth it to over dye that vintage cotton damask, but I cannot let myself think that way about plain weave cottons. For the most part, it's better to just wait for the colors I like to come along. And I have found some really good stuff this year. Look at all this metallic copper braid. I look forward to sewing more things in my favorite colors, now that I have a better idea of what they are. I've got quite a few garments that are not colors I like to wear, and some of them still get worn a lot because I don't have more of the same item in better colors. I only have 2 pairs of summer linen pants at the moment, and one of them's navy blue and the other has a hole I need to patch. So I've been wearing blue pants a lot. There's a lot more to complain about in my everyday wardrobe, but that's for another video. And first I need to finish the last one in that poll my patrons voted on. Thank you to my patrons for making these videos possible. The page on the dashboard where all the videos are listed now has a thingy that says approximately how much they've earned, and as of the time I'm recording this, my last video has made $18.40, so I'm very glad to have the Patreon to balance things out. I also have a Redbubble and a Spoonflower, which I haven't mentioned in ages because I haven't added anything to them in ages, but there's some stuff on there. Okay, bye!